uh, now see it how we can use function inside another function in React.js. Okay, so here it is. We have a function button, and inside that function we have a handle click function, and here we written uh, the button, and here on click we are handling click. We are calling the function by defining it here. Okay, let's see what the console log. It's showing hello. So we have a JSX function called button. Within this function we have another function called handle click. In HTML button tag we specify on click handle click, so when the button is clicked this function is called. The function is only available inside the button component. Clicking the button on the web app will print hello in the browser console. This is how we build an interactive website with React. That example is still fairly simple because handle click takes no arguments. What if we want to print text in the console? As the user is typing into an input box, how do we pass the text to the function? Here's how. Okay, now see the example with the input box. Web 3. So here it is. Here you can see that uh, here you can see that as I typed it, it's displaying in the log because we have uh, added the event on change. We have called this function handle on change on change event of input box. So that's how we can pass value from it and call a function and pass a value and display it here. So let's move on. Now there's another concept, React hooks, use state and use effects. Alright, we have gone our composition, data parsing and interactivity. But our apps are still quite dumb. Interactivity will allow you to run some code on button click etc. But what if you want to update some variable? Unfortunately the following does not work. Okay, so in a simple JavaScript, if we define the variable and just increment it like that, it will be incremented. But in uh, React it will not work. Let's see how we can make it work. There you can see that this application is just incremented it plus plus, and we are trying to increment it but it's nothing happen. It is still 0. So now let's see how we can do it. If you have to update the display increment, nothing will happen. Okay, now let's see. React hooks are functions that hook into different parts of the React components, allow you to doing things like updating the view when a variable value is in change, or running some JS code automatically every time the page is loaded or a variable is changed, and many more cool things. We will be primarily focused on 3 React hooks which are used 90% of time. Use state, use effect and use reference. Now let's see use state first. There are a lot of times when you want HTML view to update based on some variables value changing. We can use the use state hook to maintain the variable will automatically re-renders the HTML display on the screen every time its values change. Here's example. Okay, so in the above example we were trying to increment the value of my number, but it was not incrementing. So this is the correct syntax how we can increment inside the React app. So we have basically uh, created a hook here, initiate a hook, React hook with the value 0. This is the function use state, and this is the name of the variable, and this is the function that we will call to update the value. There it is, we will call this function and pass the value my number plus 1, my number plus 1. Okay, so this value will be incremented, and now just check it by increment it, calling the function on click increment. So here it is, great, it's working. It's now incremented the my number variable here, and it's showing us the incremented value. Okay, so if you run the above code, you will see the view of the variable gets updated and reflect the new value. Variables created using use state in React are called state variables. State variables can be updated automatically, update the view of the app. Here are other examples using a state variable with the input box. So let's see another example with the input box. Like there it is, we have defined set my name variable with the function my set name, and default is empty string. Now here we are writing the string, so basically the string pass into the function and set the new value of my name, and my name is displaying here. So that's how we can pass value in it and set the value of that variable. Okay, now there's a quiz. Before that there's a line, we see the text displayed on the HTML change, the content of the input box change. Great. Why are state variables used in React? They are used to maintain values, render the HTML whenever the values change. They are just in sugar and serve no real purpose. They are the only way to define variable in React components. So basically, this is the correct answer. Now, last thing I want to say about use state is that you can also use it for more than just basic types like string numbers. You can also use them to store arrays and objects. However, there is a caveat here. Let's look at an example. Okay, so we can use array and objects also. So let's see how we can use them. So basically here we have defined use state with the array and use state as a string. Now what we are doing, we are updating current fruit text. There is a current fruit that we are updating, is this value we are updating by using this function, and the other one is add fruit to array. So in this function we are adding item to this fruits array by using this function set fruits. No, basically we are just pushing into the array. Let's see how it's work. Okay, add fruit mango. Okay, here is basically the list of fruit which is inside the array that is displaying here. So when we add any fruit, it should be displayed here, but nothing is shown here. So why? Because if you try to run this, you will see no fruits get displayed on here. Also notice that we are not using set fruit function anywhere, instead just trying to push to the fruits array. When we try to update array directly, React does not register the state change, and that is also considered an invalid state update, which can cause the application to behave unexpectedly. We know we need to somehow use set fruits, but how? The answer is that we actually need to create a copy of fruits array and the fruit to it, and set the variable to be the new array entirely. So let's see how we can use this function set fruits, because we have seen that here we didn't use any set fruit, and it also not going to add any fruit inside this array. So we need to find some way to add it. So let's see how we can do that. Okay, there we are using dot 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 syntax. What is this? The spread operator adds all elements from the fruits array to the new fruit array, and then we add the current fruit to the array as well. So basically we have to create a new array that will going to copy all the old uh, array items and add a new items in it also, and then set it to the fruits variable, fruits array. So this fruits will now get the new array with the new item. So now let's see, is it work or not. Okay, apple, great. Banana. Okay, great. So that's how we can add item into the array in React.js application. Okay. So basically the same is true for object as well. If your state variable contains an object, you need to create a copy of the object first, update a value, and then set the variable to the new object, complete object entirely. Okay, now let's see the second hook, which is use effects. So we can manage the state now, that's great. State can also affect our rendered HTML, also great. But oftentimes there is need to automatically run some code when the page is first loaded. Perhaps the fetch data from server or the blockchain, and also need to automatically run some code when a certain state variable change. These type of functions are called side effects. React gives us the use effect hook, which allow us to write these kinds of effects. Use effects takes two arguments, a function and a dependency array. The function is the code that runs when the effect is run, and the dependency array specifies when to trigger the side effect. Okay, now let's consider the example where the website first loaded. It wants to load some data from the server. While doing so, it wants to display the user loading screen, and then once the data has been loaded, remove the loading screen and show the actual content. So let's see how do we do this. We have seen in many websites that some loading is displayed before displaying the complete website, or before displaying the any listing in it. So let's see how we can do this in the React app, and how use effect hook is will be worked here, will help us to show this. Okay, so this is the load data from server function. Inside it we have set state data, loading, make it false, and then is the function async function, load data, set loading to true until API call returns a response, set loading to true, then perform API call to load the data from server, then API call the data coming from somewhere. So when the data comes, it set the data, then set the loading to false. So when this function will call is first start the loading, then it will just wait the data to return from the server. Once it return, then it's set loading to false, means loading will going to hide. Okay, so how we can call this function, or when we call this function, we will call this function using use effect hook. So load data in the function that is run. An empty dependency array means this code is run once when the page is loaded. So basically this defines that when the page is loaded, this function will be called, and these steps will be done before displaying the listing to the user. Excuse me.